I already said I was gonna go crazy on one of my run-ins with the peoples, the enemies. People talking about SMG, all that. We ain't doing all that. You know what I'm saying? That's show. We ain't doing none of that shit. Niggas ain't with that weird shit.
And I'm getting at members, and I'm telling niggas, I'm like, I don't care about nothing nobody talking about. GM, he a mark, a buster. I'm yanking, going crazy, I'm blowing it down. Me and bro, right here, yanking.
Y'all know what's going on with me on Blood, especially ones that didn't watch me. Dead homies, it's for the members. Or it's for the Hoosers, period. It's for the Hoosers, period.
In today's video, we're gonna talk about Baby B Brayz from the Denver Lane Bloods. As most of you know, WhosWho's on YouTube. We're gonna deep dive into his early cases and charges, how he was already in jail for another case before getting charged with all these crazy cases, and how his wife was murdered, and how she caught an attempted murder charge. This is gonna be the most detailed video on YouTube about him, but let's get into it. Baby B Brayz, whose real name is DeAndre Bonner, is 34 years old right now, but he'd be from the Denver Lane Bloods since the age of 12, and he'd be in and out of jail his whole life. But we're gonna dive into his first adult case. And ironically, he'd catch his first adult case while he was in youth authority. As you can see right here, he'd be charged with 1 count of assault with a deadly weapon, not a firearm, on a peace officer, 1 count of assault and battery with great bodily injury by a California Youth Authority inmate on person not confined, which means it was on a CO, 1 count of illegal use of tear gas weapons, and 1 count of custodial possession of a weapon, which would be a shank. He would catch this case right at the age of 18, and as you can see right here, he would be sentenced to 2 years in state prison with 332 days credited. He would do about a year and be released at the end of 2011. He would then stay out of trouble until about 2015, to where he'd catch a robbery case in Pasadena, and as you see, the arrest date would be September 16th of 2015. That would be the day that 3 men allegedly broke into a house, but got caught after a police helicopter spotted their getaway vehicle. Neighbors told police that they saw the men head to the back of the house and thought it was suspicious, so they called the police. Officers then pulled them over and found jewelry and a computer taken from the house. And DeAndre Bonner, who is B Brayz, and 2 others would be arrested. But then a month later, on October 29th of 2015, B Brayz would post a $50,000 bail. But unfortunately, just 2 months after posting that $50,000 bail, he'd catch a whole new case. And as you can see, it would be for 4 counts of robbery, 1 count of possession of a firearm, and 1 count of resisting an officer. And as you can see, the arrest date would be January 18th of 2016. And then 2 days after catching this case, they would revoke his $50,000 bail for the other case. As you see, it says held to answer on January 20th of 2016. So now he would be fighting both of these cases at the same exact time, out of 2 different courthouses. But then 9 months later, on September 27th of 2016, he would be convicted after taking a plea. This would be for the robbery out of Pasadena, and he would get 2 years in state prison for this. But 2 weeks after taking the plea deal out of Pasadena, he would take the plea deal out of Compton. And as you can see, they dropped most of the charges. He would only be charged with 2 counts of robbery. He would receive 6 years in total for this case on October 13th of 2016. So between this and the Pasadena case, he would get a total of 8 years. But unfortunately, 5 months into his 8-year bid, the cops would bring up old cases and charge him for old murders that he was involved in. And it wouldn't just be a couple of charges, it would be 26 counts, ranging from robberies to attempted murders to murders, even possession of firearms. And as you see, the filing date at the top would be March 8th of 2017, which would be 5 months after he took that plea deal on October 13th of 2016. So just imagine sitting in jail doing 8 years for another case, and the cops decide to hit you with this 26 count indictment right here. But now let's break it down better than anybody ever has on YouTube. On August 21st of 2018, the people filed 27 counts of offenses committed between January 17th of 2016 to March 22nd of 2016 between B Brayz and 3 other co-defendants. It all started on January 17th of 2016 when B Brayz and his co-defendant, Kilo, would steal a vehicle from some dude at gunpoint. And then 30 minutes later, they both would use that vehicle to do a drive-by on several people. They would hit 1 person, and the shooting took place in the Hoovers. This would be B Brayz's Facebook, and this is what he posted a day after that. But just 1 month after that, on February 21st of 2016, B Brayz would be accused of firing multiple shots into a vehicle, killing somebody named Nathaniel Ankar. And again, this is what he would post on Facebook a day after the murder. But then after that, on March 20th of 2016, B. Brayz and Kilo would get into a shootout with some Crips. Nobody would be hit though, but then on March 21st of 2016, just a day later, B. Brayz would be accused of robbing somebody at 1 p.m., which would be in the afternoon, in a motel at gunpoint. And then just 10 hours later, he would be accused of killing a Hoover on 88th Street in Bering Cross. It's alleged that on March 21st of 2016, at approximately 11:20 p.m., a witness who was inside her home near the intersection of 88th Street and Bering Cross Street heard gunshots. Looking out her window, she saw somebody laying on the ground, and she saw a young black man with a gun run towards a Mercedes and climb in the back seat. The witness observed the driver also was a black man. Then she seen the Mercedes drive off. The man lying on the ground was Stephen Johnson, and he had been shot 5 times. Police found numerous casings from a .380 and a .40 caliber, so they knew there were 2 different shooters. In just a few hours after that murder, B. Brayz would post this on Facebook. The red dot would be where the murder occurred, and as you can see, the green field right there would be Manchester Park, in the heart of the 9 Deuce Hoovers. But that park generally is just a Hoover Park, which is right down the street from the Denver Lane Bloods, which is where B. Brayz is from. But 45 minutes after the murder took place, police would pull over a random vehicle in a parking lot, and B. Brayz and his co-defendants happened to be in that same exact parking lot. And when they seen the car plates, they assumed they were being pulled over, and B. Brayz and his other co-defendant would jump out the car and run. But Kilo would freeze up and stay stuck in the car, and even though they weren't being pulled over, Brayz and his co-defendant running made the attention hot on them, so the cop approached the car, and that's when Kilo decided to jump out and run out a minute later. Kilo would be the only one arrested, but he would only be arrested for a firearm charge. They would then search the Mercedes and find 5 bullets and find 1 shell casing laying on the windshield wiper. But as the deputies were searching the Mercedes, a man later identified as Brayz approached them from the east side of the parking lot. Brayz appeared nervous and was breathing fast and was sweating a bit. He told the deputies that the Mercedes was his, but he was robbed by 2 individuals at gunpoint 45 minutes earlier. The deputies then showed Brayz Kilo, who was sitting in the back of the police car, and asked if he could identify him. Brayz said he did not know him, and that he wasn't the person that robbed him. Deputies then determined the Mercedes belonged to somebody named Rodolfo S., who was a mechanic, and he confirmed he loaned the Mercedes to Brayz while he repaired Brayz's car. The deputies then gave the car back to Brayz, not knowing that a murder was just committed out of it, and not knowing that Brayz was one of the men that fled from the vehicle when the lights went on. Brayz would be Kilo and B. Brayz's co-defendant that ended up telling on them. But the next day, still not knowing that B. Brayz and them committed that murder, they would encounter B. Brayz, who fled but was caught and arrested with the assistance of the K9 unit. Police found a loaded .40 caliber handgun inside his vehicle. But then a few months later, in August of 2016, Brayz was placed in custody in connection with the murders, for which he wasn't charged with. But they still didn't know at that time that Brayz and Kilo committed them. But they ended up finding out what happened, and that Brayz and Kilo ended up doing it because they ended up doing a Perkins operation. And that's when they put a special agent pretending to be an inmate, or an inmate that's a snitch, in the cell wearing a wire, and they start asking the dude a bunch of questions. In long story short, Brayz ended up talking about the 2 uncharged murders and ended up putting it on Brayz and Kilo. Brayz told the agent that the police told him that they found DNA at both crime scenes. Brayz said for the first one, he didn't touch no guns, but for the second murder, he did. But he told the agent he didn't shoot his gun, and that Brayz did the whole thing himself, saying that Brayz finished the fool off. But at Brayz's trial, he would try to get somebody to testify on his behalf, somebody named Dominique M., who would be his wife, and her name would be Dominique Moore. Bonner's counsel contended that she can testify that on February 21st of 2016, the date of Ankar's murder, that Bonner didn't have access to the Infinity on the day of the murder, even though he had access to the Infinity and he was arrested in the Infinity later on. Because for that murder, they're relying on that Infinity. But this is where things get tricky. Because at the time of Brayz's arrest, Dominique M. was his girlfriend, and she acknowledged that Bonner was a member of the Denver Lane Bloods, and that her brother Kelvin C. used to belong to the gang as well. She identified the Infinity, in which Bonner was arrested in, as her brother's car. Her brother left the car with her when he went to Missouri. Police obtained records indicating that he left the car with her on March 18th of 2016. Dominique M. lived in the same house as her brother, but was not aware of him ever lending the car to anyone prior to him leaving it with her. But then on March 22nd of 2016, the day he was arrested with a .40 caliber, one day after the homicide, she would tell police that was the only day she allowed him to drive the vehicle. However, the next day, Dominique would show up to court with a lawyer, and her lawyer would tell the courts that Dominique is not going to testify. Brayz's lawyers would ask for the opportunity to put it on record of the objection made to the procedure and testimony that he believes would have been elicited from Dominique to help B. Brayz. The prosecutor stated his intent to impeach Dominique with statements she made in an earlier trial. Specifically, the prosecutor contended Dominique falsely denied being in a gang and downplayed the significance of a letter she received, asking her to present false testimony. And Brayz's lawyers also noted that Dominique also had a pending felony case against her. And as you can see right here, the pending charge she had was assault with a gang enhancement allegation. It's alleged that her and 3 other individuals allegedly attacked the 14-year-old girl after the girl denied being a member of a particular gang. The brother and father of the 14-year-old girl then tried to break it up, and one of the females then pulled out a knife and stabbed one of them while yelling "on lanes," which referred to the Denver Lane Blood Gang. However, Dominique would then take the stand without the jury being present. Brayz's lawyers would then ask her, "Do you have a brother named Kelvin C?" She then spoke with her lawyer and then pled the fifth on that question. Brayz's lawyers would then ask her if she recalled being interviewed by a detective about giving her brother's car to Brayz, and she would plead the fifth again. The court then asked Dominique if she refused to answer all of Brayz's counsel's questions, and she answered yes. The prosecutors would then ask her if she had access to her brother's car before he left for Missouri. She would refuse to answer that question also. But you gotta think of it like this. They know that Infiniti was involved in a murder, but they just don't know who was driving it. And they know only 3 people had access to it: Dominique, her brother Kelvin, and Brayz. So by her taking the stand and saying Brayz wasn't driving or didn't have access to it, makes her and her brother look guilty, or like they had something to do with it. But unfortunately, on November 4th of 2019, Brayz would be found guilty on all charges, and this would be his sentencing. He would receive 8 months for possession of a firearm, 50 years to life for conspiracy to commit any crime, 15 years to life for a carjacking, 5 years for a robbery, 40 years to life for an attempted murder, 32 years to life on another attempted murder, driving/taking a vehicle without consent, 3 years, life without parole for 1 murder, possession of a firearm, another 8 months, another robbery, 16 months, assault with a firearm on a person, 12 months, another burglary, 16 months, possession of a firearm, another 8 months, assault with a firearm, 4 years, possession of a firearm, another 8 months, and then life without parole for another murder, 40 years to life for another attempted murder, and then 40 years to life again for shooting at an inhabited dwelling. And as you see to the right, his sentence date would be February 21st of 2020. So if we was to break all that down, he would receive 236 years plus 7 life sentences, because 7 of them counts are a certain number to life. And we all know he's on a level 4 yard, not caring about good behavior. And as you can see right here, he's even been caught with shanks before. But unfortunately, 1 year after Brayz's sentence, on October 19th of 2021, his girlfriend Dominique would be murdered. May God rest her soul, and condolences to her family and loved ones. But that's gonna wrap it up for this video. Subscribe, comment, and like. I appreciate y'all. It's Respectable Rants.